To order this Tuesday, November the 17th, 2020. I ask Ms. Jenkins if you would please call the roll.
Ms. Richards?
Present.
Mr. Toller?
Here.
Ms. Abrams?
Here.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Present.
Mr. Duncan?
Present.
Mr. Bush?
I am here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Simmons?
Here.
Ms. Dominguez?
Present.
All right, members, just to tell you how we're going to run this meeting is we have two presentations that the administration is going to present related to all of the projects that are on the agenda. Ms. Bass will do a brief presentation related to how these projects fit within the desegregation case. She will take questions at the conclusion of her presentation. And then Mr. Schnadelbach has a presentation related to the projects as a whole. And at the conclusion of his presentation, he also has set aside some time for questions. So once we get to that portion of each of those presentations, I'll recognize any board members for questions. Of course, as we take up each of the individual projects, we'll also have an opportunity for questions related to each project and for any public input. If any members of the general public do have input that they would like to present on any of the individual projects, we do ask that you fill out one of the public input forms and present that form to Ms. Jenkins before we get to that agenda item. All right, with that, we'll recognize Ms. Bass for her presentation.
First, let me say, I am going to make a presentation, but more I will be speaking about how we came to this, and Brett will make the presentation about each project. I'll take questions after I speak. I'm also going to stay and take questions throughout with Brett, so no problem with that. I did prepare a PowerPoint, but I've been told that that's not my strength. So Brett and I kind of added on to his some stuff, and so there you go. That's not my strength. Thank you, Mr. Silly, for pointing that out.
Is her mic on?
Okay. Is my mic on?
I don't think
You just
got
need
to
to
be
speak a
closer.
little louder.
Let me tell you I'm a soft talker, but the first time I'm going to use it. Okay. All right. First, before I start, let me just say this. What we're doing now is trying to get approval for Phase 1 projects. Phase 1 projects are part of our final agreement, which is presently before the court, which this board approved. The board approved the final agreement, which includes the facilities portion. The facilities portion speaks directly about these Phase 1 projects, how they will be funded, and it speaks to CSRS, who came up with these projects, to further what we're supposed to do under our desegregation order and under this final agreement. So just so we're clear on that, that is why we are doing that. This is part of the final agreement to get where we need to be. Okay. All right. Steve, right there, tell me right. Yeah, we can choose the first slide.
You didn't even make it to the first slide.
You said it wasn't your
You
strength.
said
You said it wasn't.
This is not my strong.
It's not your strength.
This is not my strength. Talking is my strength. Okay, can y'all hear me now? I can even hear myself. Okay, so here is the first slide, and this is the background, which I was just speaking of about the final agreement. According to the desegregation order, the school board is required to. It says is required to because in the final agreement, we agreed that this is what we would do. This was negotiated, we have hired CSRS, and this is what our plan is. We are to implement a facilities plan that addresses the current student enrollment and projected growth and replacement of temporary classroom buildings with permanent classroom structures. The temporary buildings have always been a source of contention for the plaintiffs. We recognize that temporary buildings are not the best way to go about running a school system, and we are going to try and change that. This plan helps us to do that, this Phase 1 plan, these Phase 1 projects. It's also something that the court wants us to do. So there you have it. We are tasked with replacing temporary classroom buildings, and we must address the projected growth in our parish. If you look at it, it's not a secret. We have a lot of growth going on. It's exponential growth in the south end of the parish. There are houses going up everywhere. We have to address that. These children have to go to school. We have to have a place for them to go to school, and we have to have permanent classroom structures for that. The school system has identified existing revenues that can be bonded to generate approximately $27 million in construction funding. And I think we should credit our administration and Mr. Schnattelbach for finding these funds and figuring out a very unique way, I guess, to come up with and bonding this out and getting this money. That is huge for us, and it's going to allow us to further our desegregation plan and to build these classrooms for our students. This funding may be used to develop the first phase of facility improvements. If you look at the final agreement, it directly talks about this. It says $10 million, but apparently we've figured out some other ways and come up with more bonding money, which Mr. Schnattelbach can address. But that's a big deal. This final agreement was filed last September. The public has had every opportunity to look at it. The board's looked at it, I know y'all, ad nauseum. So it's been looked at, it's been talked about, we've been to hearings. It's not a secret. These projects have been put before the plaintiffs. So we know that this is what Phase 1 is supposed to look like. The second phase is contingent on the passage of a new sales and use tax and/or property taxes are providing additional revenue. Those Phase 2 projects haven't been decided yet. We have to get through Phase 1. So our Phase 1 projects will help us to desegregate schools because we will have more room and we can use our magnets in a better way. That's one way. It also will get rid of the many temporary buildings and will further getting rid of temporary structures and have better classrooms for all of our students. We know that magnet transfers work, desegregating schools. We've seen it. We see that we went from, just over the past several years, how well those magnet programs have worked and the M2M transfers. We will have more room for more students to magnet in and out. We have better magnet programs, so we know that this will help desegregate our schools. CSRS has looked at this also. They are an independent consultant, and they have agreed with that. And actually, they're the ones who give us the ideas and help us to come up with this plan. So that's where we are. Brett has a lot to tell you, and I will be here for questions, or if you have questions now.
So, Ashley, can you just walk us through, after today's vote, assuming that all of the projects do get approval from the board, what is the process and timeline for getting court approval, and then also what sort of discussions have you had with plaintiffs' attorneys about these this Phase 1
I have had just many discussions with Mr. Carter, as he is lead negotiation and settlement counsel. He has seen these projects, as has Mr. Massey. I will be filing a motion if the board approves. That is what, and Mr. Massey is aware of that I will be filing this motion. He's seen a draft of the motion. It just lists the projects and talks about what Brett's going to talk about, funding and how they help to get rid of classrooms and desegregate the schools. So that's the step. I would file that with the court, and it will be set for hearing, and the court will rule on it.
Any other board members have questions related to how Phase 1 fits into the desegregation process?
Yeah, Ashley?
Mr. Moore?
Yes. Ashley, concerning getting the consent for from the attorney representing the class action. Okay, so the attorney that has agreed with basically what we see here is a Mr. Carter, right?
Mr. Carter has seen these projects. I have not asked him for his consent at this time because I didn't have board approval.
Right. Okay. Have you been in contact at all, or know what the opinion of Mr. Taylor
I have not been in contact with Mr. Taylor. I assume that Mr. Carter has been in contact with him. They are co-counseled.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board related to the desegregation portion of this?
Yes.
All right, Mr.
Johnson,
Bush,
I do.
go ahead.
You know, obviously, let's just be honest. There's a problem with this agreement. Judge LaMelle's had it for over a year. He has not signed it. Something's there. I don't know what. Of course, obviously, I haven't spoke with him. But we sent this a year ago to him, and he hasn't responded back. But we casually walk over this sentence. The school system has identified existing revenue that can be bonded to generate approximately $10 million in construction funding. $10 million in construction funding. And it says numerous times that the purpose of this whole phase is to remove temporary classrooms from our schools. We have 203 temporary classrooms. This phase is $27 million and only removes 14 buildings. I'm not saying every 14 temp classrooms will cost us $27 million to remove, but I'm saying a year ago, I agreed to phase one projects for $10 million in this finalized agreement. And so, obviously, my vote's going to be no to every project I see here because of this. And your explanation, Ms. Bass, which I like you a lot and I appreciate that, hadn't done anything to me to say that this is not what I should go by. This is what I agreed to, I'm a man of my word, and that's what I'm going to stick to. Now, in closing, from me, and I don't have to say anything the rest of the night, I agree, we need room. We need space. We need additional classrooms. We need help. I think this is a great start. Obviously, I have no faith that the judge is going to okay it. So, but I appreciate you trying to give us an explanation of it. So that's, Mr. Chairman, thank you for my time.
I'm
Appreciate
not sure if there was a question there, but I would like to address what he said.
Go ahead, Ms. Yes, ma'am.
This was consented to or agreed to a year ago. At that time, well, during the process, because it took us a year to negotiate this, that was the figure we were given. Fortunately, Mr. Schnattelbach is very bright and has come up with a way to bond out more money. That's the explanation for that. As to whether or not this judge will sign this, I don't agree with your statement that he's looked at it and he's obviously not going to sign it. Throughout this year, I think you're aware of this, he's asked for lots of information, which we have provided. We've had 3 hearings, and we've had a COVID crisis. So I believe that's the reason that we don't have an order signed yet. In addition, Mr. Massey has asked for updated information from last year. Again, we are in the middle of a COVID crisis, and we do not have all of our information needed for his report, which the judge is waiting for. So unfortunately, we are in this situation where it's been a year, but it's not been a year of us just sitting around and doing nothing. It's been a year of us being in New Orleans 3 times. It's been discovery asked for by Mr. Taylor several times that we have answered. He's filed motions, the judge has denied them. So at this moment, we are waiting for the judge to sign, but we haven't just been sitting here doing that, and nothing has, it's not like anything has not happened.
Ms.
He has
Bass,
looked at it.
I never said anything wasn't happening. I just said, obviously, there's a problem with it. That's why he hadn't signed it. So whether it be discovery or more information, it's something's keeping him from doing it. It's been over a year, but no, not at all have I insinuated that no one's doing something about it, because we all have deseg fatigue, we all have COVID fatigue, we all have election fatigue.
Yep.
You know, we want to move forward. I understand that.
I wanted to clarify, I mean, as far as this phase and us moving forward with phase 1, I want to be clear on what I understand as far as what's in the final agreement, and what we are doing, even though the judge hasn't signed off on it, is abiding by what we consented to when we entered this agreement with the plaintiff's negotiating attorney, Mr. Taylor, with the assistance of Mr. Massey in helping to craft that final agreement. So although the judge hasn't necessarily approved it, it is an agreement between us and the plaintiff's attorney, and it's our intention to abide by what we said we would do, you know, up until the point that the judge tells us we ought to do something different. Is that what you're recommending to us?
Yes, that's an accurate statement
And-
because that's what it says.
And then, as far as what the agreement says related to Phase 1, as I understand it, is we agreed, number one, that we would get some outside experts to come in and provide data, because for whatever reason, when we went to the voters with the Vision 2020 Commission, or when we've talked to plaintiffs and Mr. Massey in the past, they don't trust just the board's opinion and the administration's opinion. They wanted us to pay somebody to go and tell us what we already knew. So we have done that. That was part of what we agreed to do, correct?
Yes.
And we did that with both a demographer and this CSRS firm that came in and is recommending to us how to assess all of the various needs that, again, we already know exist, and we already know how to prioritize, but we need to have them bless our assessment, correct?
Yes.
And so we've done that now as well in crafting this Phase 1 proposal. And then the third part was that we would move forward with some plan to start addressing our facility needs with whatever financing we can afford without going to the voters. Those were the three key elements, was experts, assess the needs, and move forward with something without having to go back to the voters for additional funding. Is that pretty much what we agreed to?
It's absolutely what we agreed to. It's also what was presented to the court, and in fact, more was presented to the court because we actually had Mr. Schnatterbach there. We've had CSRS come and testify for the court and submit a report to them. The judge had a chance to cross-examine basically CSRS and discuss what their plan was and what our needs were. So all of that was done. Well, the judge had a chance, as did Mr. Taylor. So, and that was done.
Okay. And in prioritizing what we would move forward with, the agreement also says that we, which is on this slide, that we are to prioritize getting rid of temporary buildings and avoiding the need to get new temporary buildings, mainly planning far enough ahead so that when this growth comes, we're not stuck in the same situation we've been stuck in the past and having to get temporary buildings at the last minute to address those facility needs. And that was the other objective as well, correct?
Yes, so plaintiff's counsel, that Mr. Carter, for many years, and Mr. Taylor, have had, their issue has been, a big issue has been temporary buildings. This is not new, this is not even just in the past couple of years. This has been going on for years. We've had growth and we've had to get temporary buildings. We've had to do it by a lease and then only have a year lease, which didn't save us any money, instead of having a longer lease because they wanted it to be looked at every year. That is a big source of contention, and that was a very major negotiation we underwent in this final agreement.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions from Ms. Bass right now? Or if not, we'll bring up Mr. Schnatterbach for his presentation.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, Cindy, can you move the next slide? The next slide. We have 7 projects that are in Phase 1, and I'll go through them quickly. Our first project number 1, is the purchase of Joachim Road School located within the Hammond Eastside boundary. Okay, this project, the purchase of the school would add 26 classrooms or 56,000 square feet to our building facilities. It contains 2 main buildings with 12 large classrooms each. There will be a center building which will has the capability of holding 2 classrooms with some offices. There's an office building, there's a gymnasium and a cafeteria building, and there's an athletic field. The value of the property has been appraised by our appraisers as $4.82 million. We have a tentative price with the owner to purchase for $4.2 million. Here you can see a picture of the campus. Building C and D are the classroom buildings. Building A is the office. Building B is a wing that could be converted into 2 classrooms and offices. And Building E is a gymnasium cafeteria building. And the talking points on this project is that it addresses our number 1 intensity of needs school, which is our Hammond Eastside school. What the administration is proposing is that this campus be an extension of Hammond Eastside. The projected growth for Hammond Eastside by the demographer is 290 students, or almost 22% over the next 5 years. The actual enrollment actually decreased this current year by 11 students, but the demographer projected a decrease of 24 students, so he undercounted about 13 students, real minor. There are no trailer classrooms on this building, so we'd be adding no trailers to our inventory. Campus will allow for the addition of 26 permanent classrooms. The administration is planning on relocating the pre-K to second grade classes at Hammond Eastside, which is 25 classrooms, to this campus. So Hammond Eastside currently right now has 8 trailer classrooms, of which 6 were added during the implementation of the new student assignment plan. The purchase of this campus would allow us to reduce Hammond Eastside's need for classroom space by 25 classrooms, allowing also for the removal of 8 trailer classrooms from our inventory. This allows 17 additional classrooms at Hammond Eastside for enrollment, growth, or magnet attraction. This additional 17 classrooms will allow for about 425 student desks, which approximately 200 are being projected to be taken by the demographer's projected growth. That leaves 225 student desks available for magnet attraction at Hammond Eastside. Project number 1B is also part of the purchase of the Joachim Road School property. We're proposing to do $1.5 million of improvement to bring this campus up to operational conditions and to ADA regulations. Those modifications include flooring, painting, interior finishes, about $340,000. Also includes some ADA compliances with the restrooms and walkrooms around the campus, about $118,000. Some mechanical, electrical, plumbing modifications, about $300,000. That would include air conditioning in the hallways and in the main part of the buildings. Food service modification, that'd be the construction of a cooking kitchen that would add to our current 18 cooking sites. It would make it a 19th site, which would help in the overall function of our cooking capacity at all our campuses. Wastewater modifications currently right now, the wastewater goes into a pond that we do not want to purchase. We don't want to get involved in their pond and the cleanup of the pond. We would propose to build a sewer treatment plant very similar to what we did in the Talbot Elementary, and then some site work modifications for a total cost of this project about $1.6 million. Again, you can see the campus here. Again, the buildings C and D are the main classroom buildings. Each one holds 12 classrooms in each wing. Next slide. So project number 2 is a 10 classroom addition at Champ Cooper Elementary School. So it's about 20,000 square feet addition. It's 10 classrooms. It also includes student restrooms, teacher workroom and collaboration room. There'll be a dining room with 2 serving lines, 1 outfitted, 1 prepped. There'll be bus driveways and bus stops and sidewalks. This is really the first wing of a new middle school at Champ Cooper. In phase 1, we would build the first wing, the 10 classroom addition. Hopefully in phase 2, we would look at the remainder of the campus if the need still arises. The projected cost is $5.6 million. Here you can see the layout of what the first wing would look like, bordered up against the existing Champ Cooper campus. You can see the orange addition there would be the wing, and then the bus loop that's between the addition and the existing school, and the driveways there. You see in dotted lines is the proposed future phase 2 completion of a new middle school at Champ Cooper School. And here you can see the yellow would be the footprint of this first wing. That's where it would fit on the property. And the notes related, Champ Cooper's intensity of need is number 2 on the list from CSRS. The projected growth in 5 years is 620 students, or 74% increase in enrollment. The actual enrollment this year was 47 students, or 5.6%. The projected first year enrollment by the demographer was 50 students, so he's pretty much close to the projection. There's a reduction, he's 3 students off. The campus currently has 6 trailer classrooms. This would answer your question, Mr. Bush, on why we're not removing all of them. These 6 classrooms will remain into the completion of the Phase 2, and then they would be removed from our inventory. But until we complete the completion at this campus site, I would be adverse to remove them at this particular time until we know exactly how the enrollment is going to be projected to increase over the next few years. This 10 classroom addition will account for 250 additional students' desks, or about 40% of the anticipated growth on this site. And this project will result in the removal of no classrooms at this particular time.
Snow.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you.
Hold on, we're going to hold off on questions, let him finish, and then, like I said, we're going to take questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Moore?
Project number 3 is an 8 classroom addition at Ponchatoula High School. This 8 classroom addition is 10,100 square feet. It's 8 classrooms. There's some storage rooms. There's some tablet storing, charging rooms, and then some student, teacher, desk, and collaboration area. It completes the newest wing at Ponchatoula High School. The projected cost is $2.8 million. You can see here is the outlook. The gray area is the existing 300 wing, and then the lighter yellow is the addition, the 8 classroom addition, and you can see the collaboration area in the hallway between, and then the charging tables. So this would complete this wing at this particular campus. And here is the overview of the campus. The yellow is the footprint of the new building, proposed completion of the building. The intensity need at this project is number 6 on CSRS's list. The projected growth at Ponchatoula High is 505 students, or 26.7% over the next 5 years. The actual growth this year was 84 students in year 1. The demographer projected that it would only be 19 students in year 1, so we actually grew 65 more students than the demographer projected. The campus currently has 6 trailer classrooms, all of which are modular buildings that were installed during the interim student assignment plan. This 8 classroom addition will account for 200 additional student desks, or 40% of the anticipated growth over the next 5 years. At this particular time, we're not recommending the removal of any of the trailer buildings. We're going to wait till we finish and get into Phase 2 to discuss possible removal of those buildings at that time. Our 4th project out of 7 is an 8 classroom addition at DC Reeves Elementary campus. It's about 10,700 square feet. It's 8 classrooms. It has student restrooms, has a teacher workroom, and teacher restrooms. The estimated cost is $3.2 million. This is the layout here of the building. It's kind of an L-shaped building. Classroom, this is the layout. Let's see the next slide. You'll see the kind of the footprint of the campus. It would be in front of the cafeteria building, in that area between the cafeteria and Sisters Road. There would be some additional bus lane area to give some additional bus storage there, and then it would still have access to the cafeteria in the back and some additional parking for staff and visitors. The talking points: the intensity and need on this project is 12. The projected growth over the next 5 years is 97 students, or 14%. The actual growth this year was 17 students. The projected first-year enrollment by our demographer was for 52 students, so he's actually off 35 students on this particular campus. This addition will account for 200 additional student desks, or 100% of the anticipated growth over the next 5 years. This campus currently has 6 trailer classrooms, all added prior to the new student assignment plan. After the construction, we'll be able to remove 4 of those existing trailer classrooms at this site. Project number 5 is a 14 classroom addition at Hammond High Magnet School. It's 21,000 square feet. It's 14 classrooms. There's student restrooms, teacher workroom, and teacher restrooms. It's an estimated cost of $5.8 million. It's a 2-story addition that would connect directly into the permanent existing 2-story structure. You can see on one side is the first floor with 7 classrooms, and the second side is another second floor with 7 classrooms. Both of them connecting, one of them connecting into an existing doorway on the first floor, the second one connecting into an existing classroom. The remainder of that classroom that's not hallway will be turned into an administrative office. Here you can see the layout of the building. The building's proposed to be between the gymnasium and the medical magnet school on the east side of the main building. Okay. Hammond High, the intensity need for Hammond High is 17. The projected growth is 325 students, or 21%. The actual growth this year is 162 students, or 10.7%. The demographer projected an increase of only 15 students. He missed it by 147 additional students. That 162 additional students is 50% of the anticipated growth over the next 5 years. We got it in the first year. Okay, this addition will account for 350 additional student desks, or 100% of the projected growth over the next 5 years. Hammond High has 2 trailer buildings comprising of 3 classrooms. One of the trailer buildings is used for our special education home learning environment classroom. At this particular time, there's no discussion of removing that building off of the campus. But the other 2 trailer classrooms, single building, 2 trailer classrooms, couldn't be removed from campus after the completion of this project. Project number 6A is the athletic field house with 2 classrooms at Laranja High School. The field house is 9,700 square feet. It will include a weight room, locker room, restrooms, equipment, laundry, training rooms, coaches' offices and restrooms, 2 classrooms, and public restrooms for access at games. The projected cost is $2.4 million. Here you get a layout on the layout of the building. There's the classrooms that are over here on the left side. You can see the student weight rooms next to that, then the coaches' offices and equipment rooms, and then the locker rooms on the right side, and then the bathrooms further on the far right. Okay. Laranja High School's intensity of need is 16. The projected growth for 2016 was only 2026 for the next 5 years is only 11 students. The actual enrollment increased 6 in year 1. The projected enrollment was actually a decrease of 11 students, so he was off by 17 students. The campus has 18 trailer classrooms today, all added during the implementation of the new student assignment plan. This project will account for 50 additional student desks with the 2 classrooms, or 100% of the anticipated growth over the next 5 years. The project at this time will result in the removal of no classroom trailer buildings on this campus. It's important to note that Laranja High School is our only high school without an athletic field house facility at this particular time. Project number 6B is also at Laranja High School. Oh, that's okay. We're going to be remodeling the existing weight room and locker room. The things we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting walls in the weight frames. We're going to replace flooring, replace ceiling tiles. We'll retrofit all lighting to LED lighting. We're going to remove the urinals and add counters with the laboratories, new mirrors and soap, paper towel dispenser, replace the fur down, refinish lockers, and replace the seats, create hallway between the exit door and the door going into the gym to create privacy. We're making an area for our female athletes at Laranja High School, so we need the extra privacy. We're going to define in the weight room, locker room area for softball, track, and volleyball locker space with new wall and doors. We're going to create an ADA restroom, replace the water cooler, clean and sanitize the HVAC ducts, and the projected cost in this project is $262,000. And then the last project at Laranja High School is project number 6C. This is gym access improvement to the second floor classrooms at Laranja High School. So in order to get access to 2 classrooms at Laranja that are above the gym, we need to construct an additional access stairway, and the projected cost on this is about $157,000. Our last and final project is project number 7. It's a windows and door replacement project at Kentwood High School, Kentwood High Magnet School. We're going to replace all 117 windows with aluminum storefront windows that have historic sensitivity look, so they look historical. We're going to replace the front entrance doorway to the school, and we're going to replace the gutters and repair the fascia of the school's main buildings to a historical sensitive look. The projected cost on this project is right at $1 million. Here you can see the number of buildings. There's like a wall of windows on both floors. And the next picture, you can see the back of the main building. And then you can see with the side picture, you can see the condition. These are original windows in this building. It was built in the 1930s. And again, more original windows. The intensity need for Kentwood High Magnet School is 26. There's no projected growth by the demographer. The actual enrollment actually decreased 13 students this year. The projected year one enrollment was a decrease of 9 students, so he's only off 4. The campus has no trailer classrooms, so there's none to remove. This project will allow for better protection of the school board's assets on this main building. Okay, I've presented all 7 projects to y'all. I'll entertain questions if y'all have any at this time.
Mr. Moore, you had some questions, I believe, when we were talking about the Champ Cooper project.
Yeah. Mr. Snowbuck, you mentioned that we were not going to be removing temporary buildings for a few years after construction on the 8 classrooms at DC Reeves?
Correct. At DC Reeves, we're not going to remove the temporary classrooms at this time because the projected growth at that school is so high. We want to wait till we get finished with the Phase 2 portions at that to accommodate, to make sure we have the capacity to handle the enrollment numbers as they come on the campus.
Okay, so after the project is finished and we have those new classrooms, you're saying that we still need to keep the temporary buildings?
Well, the projected growth at Champ Cooper is 600.
I'll pull it up, Mr. Schnellbach.
If you go back to the Champ Cooper slide, that would be helpful.
Is it at DC Reeves?
It's Champ Cooper. I think you misspoke earlier and said DC Reeves, but
Yes,
we meant to talk about Champ
Cooper. So
Cooper.
right the next slide, please, the previous one. See, the projected growth is 620 students. We're only adding 250 additional desks. So until we get the second wing, or second 2 wings, or Phase 2 of this school, I would not recommend removing the existing temporary trailer classrooms at this time.
Will we still be paying for those?
No, we own these buildings.
These are buildings that you own?
Yes, sir. There's no cost on these.
Okay. And there are classrooms?
They are classrooms, yes, sir.
Okay, so how does that, how does that affect the compliance with the court order and the promises that have been made in the...
Well, the court order's compliance is that we're going to remove 75% of our trailer classrooms. So when we complete, and and the court order acknowledges that during the construction phase, we would be able to retain the existing trailer buildings during that phase. On this particular campus, if you go to the next slide, Ms. Jenkins.
Which, this one?
No, the previous one. This one here, you can see there are a footprint of 2 more wings. That would be a possible Phase 2 project. Upon completion of these 2 other wings, then we would no longer need the trailer classroom buildings on this campus.
And we will have addressed the anticipated growth.
The 620 student growth, yes.
The key to doing this addition now is that it keeps us from having to do additional trailers, which would be what we would have to do if we didn't build something to address
Correct.
the projected growth.
Correct.
On the, can you speak briefly about the recommendation? I know the recommendations today on these construction projects is to enter into the design phase and to seek bids. Can you just briefly, I guess, explain or talk about what that means as far as you have projected cost here, but that does not mean that that is going to be the set cost, that we're going to put this out for competitive bids, and the way that we hope to get the best price for these projects is by allowing for that competitive bid process to work. Is that, may I guess speak to that a little bit more?
Yes, sir. What we're asking the board right now is to approve the projects upon pending court approval. Upon a court approval, we would move forward with architectural design phase, which in some of these projects could be as long as 6 months or longer. And then after the design phase is complete, then go to a bid phase, which could be 45 to 60 days. And then come back to the board with a low construction cost for approval at that time, then to commit to constructing the sites. Now, there would be costs, obviously, with the architects and designing and doing that. You know, I'm planning to come to y'all at the next finance committee meeting with how we plan to fund the bond out or to borrow money to fund the construction projects at our December 1st meeting. But I'm asking y'all tonight to consider approving the projects themselves, seek court approval, allow us to retain architectural services to start the design process of these projects.
And based on what I just heard you outline, court approval, design, bids, then construction, we're probably no less than 2 years out from actually being able to hold classes in these buildings.
Oh, that's correct, yes. The complete construction, you're looking at a 2-year period. We're looking at probably design phase and bid phase, which is the shortest on some of these projects, could be, some projects could be quicker. Like the Kentwood window replacement project probably will be much quicker than the construction of the new wing at Champ Cooper. The construction at Ponchatoula High, which is pretty much very similar to we have, probably could be designed quicker than Champ Cooper and started. So we're looking at design phase on some of these to be as little as probably 3 or 4 months to some as long as 6 months. And then from there, you're talking a 2-month bid process and then an 18-month construction project.
So we may already be too late to get these classrooms built in time to address the projected growth for some of these schools.
Yes, I'd like to, took the opportunity when I had discussed with y'all individually, it came to my attention that, some board members were looking at the total overall enrollment of our school district, but not taking into account the shift in students. Go to the very last slide in our presentation. I'll tell you when to slow down. When you get to the questions, I think it's a few slides back. But I had an opportunity to look at our actual growth by region, by the north region, the middle region, and the south region, and it really came into some opening understandings when we look at what's happening in our parish with students. Okay, no, it goes beyond the questions. I have a few slides after that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This one here, y'all. So this one here is on the north region. You can see the break between 15 and 16. That's when we did the new student assignment plan. So if I compare what our enrollment is from 2016 to the current, on the north end of our parish, we actually lost 250 students at about 25 to a classroom. That's 10 classrooms extra we have on the north end of our parish. In the middle area, you can see from that same period, 2016 to 2020, we lost 120 students, or about 5 classrooms of students. Go to the next slide. Here's the south area. This is the area that's concerning. From 2016 to 2020, we gained 549 students. That's 22 classrooms of students we gained in this last 5-year period without adding a single classroom to our inventory. That's the concern and issue that we have. We have the growth is already upon us on the south end. Now, this year we had the pandemic and our enrollment is down 118 students. But if we look at the 2019 actual enrollment, we gained 635 students. That's 35 classrooms that we gained without adding a single classroom to the inventory. That's the issue that's concerning.
Mr. Chairman.
Go, Mr. Bush.
So Mr. Steinbach, this is the point I was making. I researched the previous 5 years sales of existing homes down south, which, by the way, I want to recognize Jason Lipson in the audience, one of the hottest realtors we have in town. Some of this information I got from Jason. In the last 5 years in the south, we have sold, last year was a record for residential homes, 1,500 or some odd, I forgot the number, was huge. The houses that are approved to be built right now, already, do not equal what we've already sold in the previous 4 or 5 years. We've sold thousands. We do have thousands still on the books, and they're building them right now. But they still do not equal what we have. So your own chart, I'm looking at Parent Learning Center. Since 2016 to 2020, Parent picked up 12 students. Tucker picked up 38 students. DC Reeves picked up 6 students. This is 5 years. Ponchatoula Junior High picked up 54 students. Now, I realize the high school is 176, but I went back and checked that out also. We always have a huge freshman class of 600 or some odd students. And then, but when they graduate, and I brought this sheet with me, and real quick, I hope I don't bore anyone. In 2015-16, there were 590 freshmen. But when they graduated 4 years later, there was 411 seniors. The next year, they had 573 freshmen. When they graduated, they had 361. So we always lose that huge freshman class from before they graduate. So the point I'm making is this. I'm looking at these numbers right here, and in the previous 4 or 5 years, our elementary schools in Ponchatoula has picked up just a handful of kids. So, so my discussion at this point would be, I see the demographer's report. It's got these ungodly numbers that are just, obviously they're projections, and there's no way you can tell. It just hadn't happened in the previous 4 years. Now listen, I'm not talking about Champ Cooper. That's Miss Rose Dominguez's area. I'm not out there. I do see the numbers in Champ Cooper. They gained 272 students. K through 8th since 2016. They'll probably gain another 272 in the next 4 or 5 years. I would think that's obvious. But what do the demographers say Champ Cooper is going to gain in the next 5 years?
620 students.
But the last 4 years, they only gained 272, and there's not as many houses there this coming 5 years for sale than they were the previous 5 years. I'm looking at 2016 at
But
Champ
Mr.
Cooper.
Bush, what you're forgetting is that we moved out of Champ Cooper about 250 to 300 students during that same time period that you're talking about.
Well, actually, Mr. Duncan, we moved those out in 2015.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's still, there are a brand new, that Fairway Hope subdivision, which is over almost 800 homes, is just starting construction, and that's in Champ Cooper and Ponchatoula High zone. But it's important to note, when you look at these large numbers, now, I mentioned 35 additional classrooms. If you remove the reductions at Greenville Park and Woodland Park, you have 35 additional classrooms. But look at Hammond, the projects we're looking at that I presented to y'all deal with Hammond Eastside, where we grew 149 students. Hammond High, where we grew 238 students. Champ Cooper, where we grew 272 students. Ponchatoula High, where we grew 176 students. The projects we're asking y'all to consider are focusing on these campuses that are growing and have grown over the last 5 years. We're not asking you to do anything. We are asking you to do something at DC Reeves. Okay, but when you do DC Reeves, consider you're removing trailer classrooms. That's why that project's on the list. It has nothing to do with the projected growth. It has because there are 6 trailer classrooms on that campus, and we want to remove 4.
I think the only thing I'm saying is I'm not disagreeing we're growing. And I see Sammy here. We need a field house at Laranja High School. They don't have one. I'm not disagreeing with any project here, so for the record, do not get me wrong. But we were spending $10 million. That's what our thing said as bond. And you can spin it, cross it, add 27 million, whatever. But my objection is only the final agreement said phase 1 would be $10 million. And that's what I said, that's what I agreed to. Now, if we want to change this final agreement to 28 million, 30 million, and we want to send it back to the judge, that's a different story.
Well, I mean, and that's the purpose of going back to the judge for approval of the phase 1 projects. But,
Thank you, sir.
all right, any other questions? Ms. Dominguez, did you want to be recognized?
Yes, please. Well, actually, the final agreement says approximately 10 million, and I don't know that another 10 million is.
17 million, man.
It says approximately, and it also says to make a good faith effort to eliminate the temporary classrooms. But as he said, I mean, you keep saying you agree, we need them, then I'm not sure why you would not want to support them. But everybody has their own vote.
Hold on. Let's maintain some order. One person at a time. I'll come back to you.
I just know that when I first started in 2007, we had the diagrams for this exact addition at Champ Cooper School. And here we are in 2020, and we have hundreds more homes in the neighborhood, and we have still not purchased a new wing for these students to go to school in. I think it's way past time that we add to this campus, because there are so many homes being built every day. I pass the subdivisions, and they pour 10 slabs at a time. And I mean, they're constantly, who's to say who's going to buy the homes? We don't know. Someone may have 1 child, someone may have no children, someone may have 3 or 4 children. But I do know that in 2007, we had the same diagrams, and the cost to build this is only going up Construction is only going up, and more homes are building and moving every day. So, I mean, I'm for it. I do know it's not the exact words that's in this court order. However, it does say approximately an amount, and it does say, in good faith effort, we will eliminate the buildings as soon as we can.
Mr. Toller?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we come up with the $10 million figure because that was money that we thought we could get our hands on immediately to do an emergency construction to alleviate some of our growing pains?
Mr. Toller, I'm not sure where the $10 million figure came, because I know we were sitting on
But
$7
that was
million
before,
of cash.
that was before that we started talking about doing the refinance.
The wraparound bond?
Right, that was previous to that. So, you know, I don't think our discussion tonight should hinge on whether or not we grow it in the south end of the parish. Mr. Bush said it well. We all understand that. We know that. As someone who represents the north end, it's hard for me to go to my constituents and say why we're spending $20+ million on the south end, but it's easy to explain to them, this is where we need classrooms. So nobody in my neighborhood or in Janice's neighborhood is complaining about we don't have crowding.
Yes.
We're glad that we don't have the same issues, obviously, that the south end has, but I just wanted to clarify that I think that $10 million estimate was prior to the refinance option. The judge, I can't read his mind, but I don't think he was ever limiting us to a price tag. He was trying to get us out of portable buildings into something secure and have a place for kids to go to school.
And to do it as quickly as possible.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think the judge would have a problem with us finding more money to put towards our schools. That was just an estimate of what we thought we were going to spend. I think he would be fine with us coming up with extra with what you've talked about bonding out. At that time, we didn't know we were going to do that. So I don't think this judge would have a problem with that. It's just, like Rose said, it was an estimate of what we thought we had at the time.
On hand.
On hand.
Correct.
Ms. Janice?
And I understand that, you know, we sent in the projected order and we said approximate, but I'm just speaking from the north end, and I know the necessity that Kentwood has. And this has been an ongoing situation up at Kentwood, because it's not just to protect our assets there, it's also to protect our children, because I've sat in those classrooms and I've been in this school, and I know that the air goes out and the heat goes out, and we're just throwing money out the window. Kentwood needs to be addressed.
That's correct.
If there's no other general questions about the project, we'll move on to take up the agenda items, and of course, as we take each one of those up, if there's additional questions. Mr. Moore? Yes, sir.
Yeah, before we end? Okay. And I too, but I agree with the need for the improvements that we're talking about making. I'm not necessarily in sync with the amount of money that each one of these projects cost. I'm concerned about how we're going to bid these jobs out, whether it's going to be open to, you know, a certain group of architects and contractors, or how wide range we're going to, you know, solicit, you know, bids for completion of each phase of the project. I'm a little bit leery about the numbers. I don't know if we're going to put the numbers out there. We're just going to, you know, wait until we have a design that we agree on and submit that, you know, out to contractors for bid. None of those things are defined in the proposal before me right now. You know,
Okay.
I have to also express the opinion of some of the members of the community about purchasing Joachim. You know, it does have a symbolism for the African American community. It was a school that was purchased to basically escape segregation. When the schools were ordered to segregate, that school was built to keep the children of those parents who did not want to segregate the schools from having their children go to school with those children who did enter into segregation. That creates a stigma, and I think it's something that should be addressed and considered. I would like to see the other options that we had, the other options that we pursued before we settled on presenting this as a part of this facilities upgrade. So, but other than that, I know that we need the room. I know that we need the improvements. But that I have to include that in my objection, to what I see before me.
Yeah, what Ms. Richards is asking, as we're about to take up agenda item A, which is the Joachim Road project, Ms. Richards is asking me to explain that my understanding is that if the Joachim Road project does not pass this evening, then the remaining items on the agenda will be tabled so that we can go back to the administration to revise the project with some other plan to address our high priority needs related to the east side of Hammond. The only, I guess another way of putting it is, the way that we're able to afford to take up some of these other projects that have a lower priority is because of the savings that we're going to be able to achieve by addressing the capacity issues on the east side of Hammond with the Joachim Road project. So without being able to take that savings, we would have to go back to the administration and see, I guess, and retool the overall recommendations from phase one. So is that what you were asking me to address? Okay.
Mr. Duncan, do you have another plan for Hammond Eastside on campus?
The only other options that I have seen considered is doing wings at Hammond Eastside. And, if you look at the cost of a wing on some of these other projects, for example, the 10-wing classroom at Champ Cooper is $5.6 million in projected cost. So if we were to have to do that and only get 10 classrooms at Hammond Eastside, then we'd have to come up with another $5 million or so to do the rest of what we're trying to get out of Joachim. Where do we get that other $5 million from? So I mean, the point is just, I don't want anybody to be caught off guard that if for some reason the Joachim Road idea doesn't pass tonight, that we would have to table and go back to the administration for some retinkering, that would be the action of the chair. All right, but let's take up the Joachim Road project now. Y'all have seen the presentation. I know many of you have gone to visit the campus. Do any board members have any questions related to the Joachim Road project or any additional points, Mr. Schnattelbach?
Mr. Moore, I understand the sensitivity of this project. I truly do. Just want to bring to the point about the cost so you get an idea. The cost of the Joachim Road School, along with the improvements, comes out to $5.8 million, but it comes out to $102 a square foot, where the costs on the other projects we talk range from $250 in Laranja to over $300 a square foot. So the cost of the Joachim project is less than half on a per square foot basis. So it's a significant savings to get into 26 classrooms. Just want to make that known.
It's a 50-year-old building too, so.
All right, Ms. Richards?
One other question I just need to clarify. Okay, again, what students would be attending the Joachim school? What's on?
The proposal is that the students that are currently zoned to Hammond Eastside would be, that zone would not change, and some grade, we're not voting on exactly which grades would be moved tonight. That's not what tonight's vote does, but the proposal of the administration is that the students that are currently zoned to Hammond Eastside would be the students using the Joachim Road School. I don't know the history that Mr. Moore talked about as far as this Joachim Road School. Assuming that that is true, I would, I guess, respond to that by saying what a beautiful redemption it would be to take whatever that school used to be its intention and then turn it into a fully desegregated school as a result of the vote of the board tonight, because we know that Hammond Eastside's current student population is fully desegregated. It is a 50-50 campus that is highly attractive to the residents of Hammond and does an excellent job of educating children. So to redeem that property in this way, as well as using it to help ultimately bring a close to the desegregation case in the right way, I think would be an excellent story to be able to tell in the years ahead. Any other questions related to this agenda item? Is there any public input? All right, there being no public input, the administration's recommendation is that we approve the purchase of the Joachim Road School located in Hammond at the price not to exceed the appraised value, pending court approval of all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion by Mr. Toller to adopt the administration's recommendation?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Robin. Ask the members of the committee to vote their machines.
Voting is open.
I think I timed out, Ms. Jenkins.
Your vote, Mr. Duncan?
My vote is yes.
Mr. Moore?
I think he's logging back in.
Yeah, I had to
Oh, he's
log back
logging
in.
in? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Motion passes with Mr. Moore voting no, Mr. Bush abstaining.
All right. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 2B, which is to consider approval to design and seek bids to make the needed improvements to bring the Joachim Road School located in Hammond into operational condition, including compliance with ADA regulations at a cost not to exceed $1.6 million, pending court approval of all recommended Phase 1 projects. Are there any questions related to that agenda item? All right, if not, is there a motion to adopt the
I'll make the
administration's
motion.
recommendation? Motion is made by Mrs. Bailey Simmons. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Abrams. Is there any public input? Being no public input, we'll call the question on the motion. Ask that members vote their machines.
Voting is open. Mr. Moore? Voting is closed. Motion passes with Mr. Bush abstaining.
Next item on the agenda, agenda item C, is the administration's recommendation or request from the board that we approve the design and seek bids to construct the first wing of a new middle school campus at Champ Cooper Elementary, which would include a 10-classroom addition, restrooms, teacher workroom, and a cafeteria with a serving line at an estimated cost of $5.6 million, pending court approval of all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion?
I will gladly make that motion.
I'll second it. Motion is made by Mrs. Dominguez to adopt the administration's recommendation, seconded by Mrs. Bailey Simmons. Is there any public input on the motion? All right.
Mr. Duncan, one,
Mr. Toller is recognized for a question.
yeah, just wanted to comment in general on all these, you know, the prices, the price tags for construction nowadays is just astounding to me, and the cost per square foot, everything scares the heck out of me. In the last year, I've been working on a project with our church to do a church office, and that price tag was twice what I thought it was going to be a year ago. But it just never ceases to amaze me, the price of construction for not only governmental, but then school construction. And commercial on top of that, it just runs these prices up. So when someone in the general public looks at some of these prices and they say, what are we paying per classroom? They have to remember what we're getting. We're not getting portable buildings, or we're not getting a metal shell with, you know, painted concrete. We're getting first-class classrooms for our children, which is what they deserve. So just want to make sure to point that out.
All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll call the question and ask that members vote their machines.
Voting is open.
But we still hope these estimates come in a lot lower. Be nice.
Voting is closed with Mr. Bush and Mr. Moore abstaining.
All right. Next item, agenda item D, is a recommendation from the administration that we approve give them authority to seek design and seek bids to construct an 8-classroom addition at Ponchatoula High School at an estimated cost of $2.8 million, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation?
I will gladly make that motion as well.
Motion is made by Mrs. Dominguez.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Bailey Simmons. Are there any questions or comments from the committee members? Is there any public input?
No.
All right, we'll call the question then and ask members to vote your machines.
Voting is open. Motion passes with Mr. Bush and Mr. Moore abstaining.
Next item on the agenda is a recommendation from the administration that we approve to design and seek bids to construct an 8-classroom addition with restrooms at DC Reeves Elementary School at an estimated cost of $3.2 million, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Give this one to Ms. Bailey Simmons for the
Second.
motion, seconded by Mrs. Dominguez. Are there any questions from the committee? Any public input?
No.
All right, we will then call the question, ask members to vote their machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed with Mr. Bush and Mr. Moore abstaining.
All right, motion is agreed to then. We'll move on to agenda item F, which is a recommendation from the administration that we approve to design and seek bids to construct a 14-classroom addition at Hammond High Magnet School at an estimated cost of $5.8 million, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion to adopt the administration's recommendation?
I move to adopt.
Motion is made by Mr. Westmoreland,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Toller. Is there any questions? Are there any questions from the committee on the motion? Is there any public input?
No.
Without any, then we'll call the question, ask members to vote their machine on the motion.
Voting is open. Voting is closed with Mr. Bush and Mr. Moore abstaining.
Motion then is agreed to. We'll move on to agenda item G, which is a recommendation from the administration that we approve to design and seek bids to construct an athletic field house with 2 classrooms at Laranja High School at an estimated cost of $2.4 million, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects.
That's
So
mine.
I gladly make
I'm
that.
This is
Let Ms. Simmons,
Mrs.
mine.
Sammy?
Mrs. Bailey
I've been waiting
Simmons.
20 years.
Mrs. Bailey Simmons makes the motion, seconded by Mrs. Abrams. Are there any questions from the committee on the motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a statement that
Mr. Bush?
that Laranja High School and Coach Morris and Chambers and Colton Hustler used to punt, take his shoe off, go put a shoe on, kick an extra point. I've got beat so many times at Laranja High School, but it was one of the best and greatest experiences I've ever seen. And it is a shame that that thing doesn't have a field house. And buddy, I'm sending this to Judge LaMille. You need a field house. So I'm voting absolutely yes.
Any other?
Chairman.
Yes, sir. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Is there any public input?
No.
All right, we'll call the question then on the motion. Ask members to vote their machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Motion is agreed to. All right, move on to agenda item H, to consider approval to design and seek bids to remodel the existing Laranja High School football locker room and weight room to meet the needs of the girls' athletic programs at an estimated cost of $263,000, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion to?
I'll make that motion.
Motion is made by Mrs. Bailey Simmons to
Second.
adopt the administration's recommendation, seconded by Mrs. Abrams. Are there any questions from the committee on the motion? Is there any public input?
No.
All right, then, we'll call the question on the motion. Ask members to vote their machines.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes with Mr. Bush abstaining.
All right, motion is agreed to. Move on to agenda item I, which is a request from the administration that we approve the design and to seek bids to construct an additional fire marshal approved emergency exit serving the 2 classrooms located above the Laranja High School gymnasium at an estimated cost of $158,000, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects. Is there a motion to adopt the administration's
I'll
recommendation?
make a motion.
Motion is made by Mrs. Abrams, seconded by Mrs. Bailey Simmons. Question, Mr. Toller?
Yeah, one quick comment on that. That's not $158,000 for a staircase. That is connecting more than one hall and significant work to make this emergency exit work. So this is not a deer stand on the side of the building for $158,000. This is actual interior and exterior work.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Toller.
speak from experience. You spent $158,000 on a deer stand before?
But somebody in Laranja could do one for a lot less than that, I bet.
Yeah, for nothing.
Any other questions from the committee? Is there any public input?
No.
All right, then, we'll move to question on the motion. Ask members to vote their machines.
Voting is open.
Bless you.
Voting is closed. Motion passes with Mr. Bush abstaining.
And finally, to Ms. Richards' motion, it's agenda item J, the administration's recommendation that we approve to design and seek bids to replace all windows and front entrance doors at Kentwood High Magnet School's main building at an estimated cost of $1 million, pending federal court approval on all recommended Phase 1 projects. Ms. Richards makes that motion.
I gladly make that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Toller. Are there any questions from the committee?
Okay.
Any, you have some? No. Any public input?
No.
Without any, then we call the question on the motion and ask members to vote their machine.
Voting is open.
Cindy, I have a question for you. What was my vote on item B?
On what?
Item B.
Item B?
I'll come back. I can come back and let you correct it if you need to.
Yes, yes.
Give me just a moment.
Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
All right. The motion is agreed to. Ms. Jenkins, if you would, Mr. Moore would like to know his vote on agenda item B. Mr. Moore, is that correctly reflected?
No, that's a no vote.
He voted yes.
Yeah, well, it should,
We
I'd like to change that to a no vote.
we
Can you do that?
We can do that. He's indicating that he hit
Okay.
the wrong button and intended to vote no. The chair directs the secretary to correct Mr. Moore's vote, reflecting a no vote on agenda item B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, just one second. Okay, that motion
With that, the
Passes.
motion is still
Yeah.
agreed to. We're just correcting his
right.
vote.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, can you confirm that the machine now correctly reflects your vote?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. There being no other business to come before the committee,